In the treasury of India's epic lore, there lies a story that is as tender as it is timeless, the tale of Nal and Damayanti. Rooted in the great Mahabharata and preserved through centuries of storytelling, this legend is not merely a love story. It is a soul-stirring saga of devotion, destiny, virtue, downfall, and redemption. Nal, the noble king of Nishadha, and Damayanti, the radiant princess of Vidarbha, are bound by a love so deep that even gods acknowledge it. Yet their journey is not free from suffering. Tested by the forces of fate and the shadow of Kalyug, the couple is torn apart, only to reunite through unwavering faith and inner strength. This book is a reflection of Dharma, righteousness under pressure, and shows us that even in the darkest moments, the light of love and truth can guide us home. Through this video book, told in episodes with vivid visuals and deep narration, we walk with Nal and Damayanti, from royal halls to silent forests, from gambling courts to moments of divine reunion. Let us now begin this sacred journey of endurance, love, and moral triumph, the divine tale of Nal and Damayanti. Chapter 1. Story of Nal Damayanti. Lo, in the ancient kingdom of Nishadha, ruled a noble and virtuous king named Nal. Beloved by his people and skilled in every art of kingship, Nal was not only a mighty warrior, but also an expert in the game of dice, horsemanship, and governance. His glory spread across Aryavat, and tales of his wisdom and beauty echoed in every court. Far away, in the kingdom of Vidarbha, there lived a princess of unmatched grace, Damayanti, the daughter of King Bhima. She was famed not only for her celestial beauty, but also for her intelligence and unwavering devotion to Dharma. Her name reached the ears of Nal through wandering sages, and from that moment, an invisible thread of destiny began to weave their hearts together. Nal, who had never seen Damayanti, began to dream of her. Likewise, Damayanti, who had never laid eyes on Nal, found herself deeply enchanted by stories of his valor. As if blessed by fate, they both fell in love with each other's virtues before they had ever met. One day, Nal found a golden swan with magical powers. This swan could speak, and sensing Nal's longing, it offered to fly to Damayanti and sing praises of his master. When the swan reached Damayanti and told her about Nal, her heart overflowed with love and faith. She decided that she would choose no one else but him. As her Swamvir approached, where princes and even gods would come to win her hand, Damayanti remained firm in her heart. Her soul had already found its companion. This is not just about love at first sight. It is about love before sight. A love born from virtue, respect, and destiny itself. But as divine as their union would be, the path of their life would not be smooth. Destiny had trials in store, for even the noblest hearts are tested by time. The forces of Kalyuga, envy, pride, and separation would soon cast their shadow upon this divine couple. Yet, in the story of Nal and Damayanti, we do not merely see romance. We see the battle between Dharma and Adharma, between fate and free will, and the unshakable strength of true devotion. This is their story, a saga of love, loss, longing, and divine reunion. Chapter 2. Damayanti Swamvir and Wedding. The day of Damayanti Swamvir finally arrived, a sacred event where she would choose her life partner from among the assembled kings, princes, and even gods. The palace of Vidarbha was adorned with gold and garlands, with melodies echoing through the air and noble warriors from every land in attendance. But little did anyone know, the Swamvir had become a cosmic event. Such was the fame of Damayanti's beauty and virtue that not just kings, but the gods themselves, Indra, Agni, Varuna, and Yam, came to claim her hand. The heavens had taken notice. Yet, Damayanti's heart was already given. It belonged to King Nal, even though she had never met him in person. As the Swamvir approached, the gods appeared before Nal and asked him to become their messenger. They wished him to go to Damayanti and speak on their behalf, convincing her to marry one of them. Nal, though pained, did not refuse. True to his Dharma, he accepted the divine command and carried their message to Damayanti. But when Damayanti heard Nal's voice and beheld his radiant form, her heart trembled with emotion. She recognized him instantly, the man of her dreams, the soul she had loved from afar. With folded hands, she said, "O King Nal, I have already chosen you in my heart. Not even the gods can change that now." At the Ember Hall, she walked with grace through the assembly. All eyes were on her, including the gods who had disguised themselves to resemble Nal. Yet, guided by her love, Damayanti saw through the illusions. She identified the real Nal, not by looks alone, but by the aura of humility and righteousness around him. With firm resolve, she placed the garland of choice around Nal's neck. A gasp swept through the court. The gods, though momentarily disappointed, smiled, for they saw the purity of her devotion. They blessed the union, and the wedding of Nal and Damayanti was celebrated with great joy. Two kingdoms rejoiced, and the earth itself seemed to smile upon them. This was not just a royal marriage, it was a union of souls, sanctioned by fate and blessed by the gods. A love born in the heart, tested by karma, and crowned by destiny. But the story does not end with their wedding. In fact, their trials were about to begin. Even divine unions are not spared the tests of time. The forces of Kali, envy, and misfortune were gathering in silence, waiting for the right moment to strike. And so, after joy comes the test. The love between Nal and Damayanti, though true and sacred, would soon face the harsh winds of fate. Chapter 3: Malevolence of Kalyug, Defeat of Nal in Gambling, and his exile from the city. After this full union of Nal and Damayanti, their kingdom of Nishadha flourished. Joy prevailed in the land, and the people praised their just and noble king. Nal ruled with wisdom, strength, and compassion, while Damayanti stood by his side as a symbol of grace and Dharma. It seemed that nothing could disturb their happiness. But fate, ever watchful, had other plans. Far beyond mortal sight, the spirit of Kalyug, the dark force of the age of decline, had taken notice. Enraged that Damayanti had chosen a mortal man over the gods, Kalyug vowed revenge. He waited, for by the laws of the universe, he could not affect a man as pure as Nal unless he faltered, even slightly, in Dharma. Years passed, and one day, Nal unknowingly failed to perform his morning purification before prayer. That small crack in his spiritual shield was enough for Kalyug to enter his being, and with that, the seed of ruin was sown. Slowly, Nal began to change. A strange restlessness crept into his mind. The once wise and disciplined king developed a fascination for dice, the game of chance. Though skilled, he found himself drawn to it not for sport, but with an obsession that clouded his judgment. His Pushkara, envious of Nal's glory, challenged him to a game. Blinded by pride and the influence of Kalyug, Nal accepted. What followed was a series of fateful games where Nal, time and again, wagered and lost. First gold, then jewels, then his army, then his palace, until at last he lost his entire kingdom to Pushkara. The once mighty king, beloved by all, now stood stripped of his wealth and throne. Humiliated and defeated, Nal prepared to leave. But Damayanti, loyal and unwavering, refused to abandon him. In a gesture of pure love, she cast off her royal garments and jewels and followed her husband into the forest, barefoot, exiled yet resolute. Together, they walked into the wilderness, away from the echoes of royal drums, into a world of silence, thorns, and survival. This chapter marks a turning point in the epic, where love is no longer about joy and celebration, but about standing together in suffering. It reminds us that even the most righteous can fall when pride blinds the soul, and that temptation, like the dice, can seem small but destroy everything. Yet within this fall lies the seed of a deeper rise. For when the heart is pure, even exile becomes a path to spiritual awakening. Nal and Damayanti, once rulers of a mighty kingdom, were now wanderers. But their journey through the forest was far from the end. It was the beginning of a greater test, a deeper transformation, and a love that would shine even in darkness. Chapter 4: Abandonment of Damayanti by Nal, her crisis, vision of divine sages, and her stay in the palace of Subahu. The first was silent, but the hearts of Nal and Damayanti were stormy. Stripped of luxury and comfort, they walked hand in hand through the dense wilderness, their feet bloodied, their spirits tested. Hunger, exhaustion, and the harsh sun were not their only enemies. Despair had begun to whisper. Nal, tormented by the weight of his losses and under the lingering shadow of Kalyug, felt shame and helplessness. Though Damayanti had followed him out of love, he now questioned if she deserved this life of suffering. His mind, clouded by guilt and confusion, reached a tragic decision. One night, as Damayanti slept peacefully under a tree, Nal quietly rose, took his sword, and with trembling hands, cut their shared garment in two. Leaving her half to cover her modesty, he walked away into the night, abandoning her in the forest, alone. When Damayanti awoke, Nal was gone. She called his name again and again, her cries echoing through the trees, unanswered. The forest, once their shelter, now seemed a prison of loneliness. Yet Damayanti did not break. Grief-stricken but not defeated, she gathered her strength and began to walk, determined to find her path. She faced wild beasts, poisonous snakes, and cruel men, but none could extinguish her inner fire. Her resolve was rooted in love and righteousness, her heart steady even as her world fell apart. As she wandered, exhausted and near collapse, Damayanti encountered a group of hermits, wise sages who saw the truth of her soul. They recognized her not as a fallen queen, but as a woman of divine strength. Moved by her courage and purity, they blessed her with hope and guidance. Following their direction, Damayanti reached the kingdom of Chedi, ruled by King Subahu. Taken in as a mysterious and noble woman, she found refuge in the queen's palace. Her identity remained hidden, but her conduct and grace revealed her royal nature. She was given a place of honor and peace, but her heart still longed for Nal. It was in the quiet chambers of Subahu's palace that she began to reflect. Her pain had not turned to bitterness. Instead, she turned inward, praying for reunion, for clarity, and for strength to endure what lay ahead. This chapter in Damayanti's journey is one of pain, abandonment, and survival, but it is also a testament to her unwavering dignity. Even when left alone in the dark, she carried her light. Even when the world forgot her, she remembered who she was. In abandoning her, Nal had fallen to the depths of despair, but Damayanti, left with nothing, began her rise, not outwardly, but within. And in the silence of her sorrow, destiny continued its work. The threads that had once bound their souls were not cut, only stretched until the time was right to weave them back together. Chapter 5: The Disguise of Nal, his work as a charioteer, Damayanti's search, and their near reunion. From the palace of Chedi and the loving eyes of Damayanti, King Nal wandered alone, consumed by grief and guilt. His heart ached with the memory of abandoning his beloved, but he felt unworthy of her, broken, disgraced, and defeated. As he wandered deeper into the forest, Nal encountered a great serpent, Karkotka. Bitten by the mystical creature, Nal's appearance was altered drastically. His radiant form was transformed, his skin darkened, his features changed, and no one could recognize him now. But this was no curse, it was a hidden blessing. Karkotka, aware of Nal's destiny, told him that this disguise would protect him until the time was right. Taking on the name Bahuka, Nal traveled to the kingdom of Ayodhya and entered the service of King Rituparna. The once mighty king of Nishadha now became a humble charioteer and cook. But even in disguise, his noble qualities could not be hidden for long. Rituparna noticed Bahuka's unmatched skills, especially his incredible speed with horses and his deep knowledge of the science of numbers and time. Back in Vidarbha, Damayanti was not idle. Rescued and reunited with her father, King Bhima, she hid her pain behind a calm face. But her heart was restless. She knew Nal was alive. She could feel it, and she was determined to find him. Using intelligence, Damayanti devised a clever plan. She sent trusted messengers to every kingdom, disguised as wandering poets and priests. Each one carried the same message, a mysterious poem that described the exile, sorrow, and inner nobility of a man who had once been a king. The poem's details were unmistakably about Nal, but without revealing his name. One such messenger arrived in the court of King Rituparna. There, he recited the poem, and as Bahuka listened, something stirred in him. He responded with words filled with hidden meaning, hinting at truths only Damayanti could understand. The messenger returned to Vidarbha and relayed the conversation. Damayanti knew instantly it was Nal. Her heart, still tied to him by fate, recognized his soul behind the disguise. To bring Nal back, Damayanti arranged a second Swamvir. But this time, it was only a strategy. The news of her remarriage was false, a bait to draw Nal out of hiding. King Rituparna, unaware of the plan, asked Bahuka to drive him to Vidarbha immediately. It was an impossible distance to cover in one day, but Nal, the master of horses, did it with ease. His skill and speed astonished all. As they reached the palace gates, fate itself held its breath. Nal and Damayanti were in the same city once again, hearts full of questions, longing, and hope. But the union was not yet complete. One final test awaited. One final moment of truth where identity would be revealed and love would face its ultimate trial. Chapter 6. Nal's search for Damayanti, Rituparna's journey to Vidarbha, and the exit of Kalyug. As Rituparna's chariot thundered toward Vidarbha, drawn by Nal, now disguised as Bahuka, the wheels of destiny spun faster than ever before. Damayanti's clever plan had worked. The announcement of a second Swamvir had reached the ears of Nal, though he arrived not as a husband, but as a charioteer. The journey itself was remarkable. Nal displayed supernatural mastery over the horses. They flew like the wind, covering impossible distances in a single day. Rituparna, astonished by this feat, questioned Nal about his skills. In exchange, Nal asked to learn the king's secret art of numbers and dice, Akshayari Daya, the science that could even predict the fall of leaves and the roll of dice. This exchange was more than a trade of knowledge. It was symbolic. The very skill that once led to Nal's downfall, gambling, was now returned to him, but this time as wisdom, not temptation. The fog of Kalyug that clouded his mind began to lift. With this new clarity, the dark influence that had haunted him for years began to retreat. Kalyug, the spirit of destruction, doubt, and disorder, had entered Nal only when his Dharma had slipped. But now, with the light of self-awareness and the recovery of his inner strength, Nal became too pure, too radiant for Kalyug to remain. Slowly, silently, the dark force exited his being. Nal was free again, free in mind, in soul, and soon to be free in identity. Meanwhile, in the palace of Vidarbha, Damayanti was waiting with bated breath. She had created the false Swamvir not to deceive, but to call forth her beloved, to create the chance for a reunion without breaking tradition or dignity. When she heard that Bahuka had arrived with King Rituparna, her heart skipped a beat. Was this the same Nal? The voice of her soul whispered yes, but she needed certainty. She devised another test. Damayanti sent her maid, Kesini, to speak with Bahuka. In their conversation, Bahuka's knowledge of royal customs, his reactions to familiar names, and the nobility of his speech revealed more than he intended. Every word, every pause was filled with clues only a devoted wife could read. Damayanti wept in silence. Her faith had not betrayed her. Nal was near, as sat in the palace courtyard, unaware that he had been discovered. A strange calm descended upon him. His mind was no longer tormented. The burden of shame, the weight of guilt, all were dissolving. He sensed something sacred was about to happen. The moment of truth was close. The lovers, long separated by fate and disguised by sorrow, were now standing at the edge of a divine reunion. And Kalyug, the shadow that once broke their world apart, had now left the stage, defeated not by war, but by endurance, wisdom, and the purity of love. Chapter 7. Nul's transformation back, his reunion with Damayanti, and return to the kingdom. The path of exile, suffering, and silence was nearing its end. In the royal palace of Vidarbha, two hearts, once separated by fate, now stood on the edge of reunion. Nal, in the disguise of Bahuka, had arrived unknowingly into the very heart of his past. Damayanti, no longer a queen in sorrow, but a woman of unshakable will, had played her final card. And now, it was time for truth to rise. Summoning her courage, Damayanti sent a trusted maid to speak directly to Bahuka. The maid carefully asked him questions only Nal could answer about his knowledge of horses, of cooking, of the sacred bond he once shared with a queen in the forest. Bahuka's replies were calm, composed, but filled with the sorrow of remembrance. Every word held echoes of Nal's soul. Then Damayanti came herself, not as a grieving wife, but as a seeker of truth. She stood before Bahuka and spoke softly, asking of her husband, asking of Nal, and the pain he endured and the choices he made. Bahuka, moved deeply, finally cast away all hesitation. He revealed himself. With trembling hands and a voice choked by emotion, Nal told her everything: his fall, his guilt, his transformation, and the darkness he carried inside. His body had changed, but his soul remained hers. Damayanti did not need proof. Her heart had known all along. She stepped forward, eyes full of tears, and embraced him. The moment was still. No fanfare, no royal music, only the quiet joy of love restored. The gods, watching from the heavens, smiled. Nal, blessed now with the secret of the dice from Rituparna, was no longer vulnerable. The weakness that once doomed him had become his strength. The cloak of Bahuka fell away, and Nal stood once again in his true form, radiant, kingly, and whole. Soon after, with the blessings of King Bhima and Queen Sunanda, Nal and Damayanti prepared to return to Nishadha. But this was no ordinary homecoming, it was a reclaiming of Dharma. Nal, now equipped with wisdom and humility, challenged his brother Pushkara once again, not in anger, but in justice. This time, the game of dice ended differently. Nal regained his kingdom, his honor, and the respect of all. Yet, he did not seek revenge. In a gesture of grace, he forgave Pushkara and restored peace in the land. Damayanti was once again queen, not of gold and jewels, but of a story that would live forever in the hearts of those who seek truth, faith, and love. Thus ends the divine tale of Nal and Damayanti, a journey through fire, shadow, and light. A love story, yes, but more than that, a Dharma story. A reminder that no matter how far we fall, love, guided by righteousness, can lead us home.